Every other dating app has failed you. Tinder, ghosted, Bumble, unmatched. And Hinge is designed to be deleted, and it's all by your ex. That's why we have Send Me, and this episode is sponsored by this very wonderful company, which is a dating app that matches you through your body odor. So forget swiping right. You can instead sniff right. Just like this.
Yummy!
Hi everyone, we are the control group. I am Dishita, and with me we have
Arshia,
Matthew.
Zen.
Today's topic is about attraction and sexuality, and basically today we'll be talking about what makes sex happen. So for today's podcast, we have a varying range of topics and articles that we'll be discussing.
So the first article actually conducted this research to assess whether sexual behavior among young adults has changed across generational cohorts. And by the way, this article is from Twenge et al. 2016. Basically, they were doing this article to combat the widespread view that there are more sexually active young adults in this modern day. But when they actually invested the information from the past national representative data, they actually found that it was the opposite, and more young people these days were more likely to report having no sexual partners at all, which is just a baffling shift towards sexual inactivity rather than the common idea suggesting increasing sexual activity. And there are some reasons for doing this. It could be, as they said, people of today are reaching adult milestones a bit later, maybe due to economic reasons. So maybe these milestones could be marriage, independent living, or even having just a stable employment. And because of that, that could reduce sexual activity. And also there might be cultural changes such as spending more time online. So because of this, they are less embedded in traditional dating pathways, and as a result, this sort of things may happen.
Okay, so moving on to the second article, I would like to start with a question. Have you ever met someone and just liked the way they smelled? Maybe you couldn't explain it, but something about their scent just drew you in. Well, it turns out science has actually been studying this, and the findings are pretty fascinating. So this article that we're discussing by De Silva et al. Was a systematic review, meaning the researchers did not collect new data themselves. Instead, they carefully analyzed 7 existing studies on how body odor influences attraction, specifically looking at people across different sexual orientations. So for like heterosexual and non-heterosexual men and women. The first were like the methodology including collecting armpit odor from t-shirts and cotton pads that participants had worn. The second was synthetic chemical compounds such as androstenedione and estrotretinol, which are basically candidates for what scientists call human pheromones, meaning chemical signals our bodies might naturally produce to communicate with others. What they found is really interesting. It turns out that gay men respond to body odors in a way that closely mirrors how straight women respond, gravitating toward masculine scents. And when it comes to certain chemical signals in the body, think of them as natural scent signals. People seem to draw to ones that match who they're naturally attracted to, regardless of their sexual orientation. However, and this is important, the research was much more limited when it came to non-heterosexual women, mostly because very few studies have included them, making it hard to draw solid conclusions there. The big takeaway, however, is that smell isn't just about hygiene. It may actually be carrying invisible information about who we are and quietly shaping who we're drawn to.
Okay, so for my article, it is attraction in every sense, how looks, voice, movement, and scent drew us to future lovers and friends. Most of the research from this article actually focus on faces and opposite sex dating. This study, however, takes a more holistic approach by looking at how sight, sound, movement, and smell work together to form our first impression of others, not just potential lovers but also as friends. For the experiment done by Schmieder, the researchers, they used 61 agents to provide the stimuli and 7 perceivers, those who were rating the stimuli. So So the perceivers were shown the looks, voice, movement, scent, and multimodals. So the multimodals include combined video, audio-visual video clips. So this study actually revealed several fascinating insights on how we actually read others. So ranking by scent in terms of absolute attractiveness, body odor was consistently rated as the least attractive modality, while audio-video was the most attractive, which is quite mind-blowing because from previous studies, most of them, they have nice smelling as a attractive point. So the next one will be redundancy. The researchers found that different senses often signal the same thing. For example, if someone has an attractive face, they are more likely to have an attractive voice. Interestingly, an attractive body scent was linked to attractive body movement, suggesting that these two signal similar different variable traits like health or hormones. The next one will be lovers versus friends. The rules for attraction are remarkably similar, whether looking at the opposite sex or the same sex. So personal versus common taste. So this is kind of stemming from evolutionary theory as well. While we often agree on who is conventionally attractive, personal preference usually plays a massive role as well. In fact, for the same-sex relationships, and preference is usually more dominant than common agreement on beauty. So attraction isn't just about a pretty face. Our brains are constantly integrating a symphony of non-verbal cues, how we move, how we sound, and even how we smell, to decide within milliseconds who we want in our lives. Whether you're looking for a partner or just a new friend, your attractiveness is usually a multi-sensory experience.
So with that being said, today we are joined by Tammy Fontana, a US-trained mental health counselor and a certified sex therapist who is based in Singapore. She works with individuals and couples on a wide range of issues related to intimacy, relationships, and sexual well-being. Drawing from her background in counseling and sex therapy, her work focuses on not just sex itself, but also its emotional, relational, and psychological factors that shape how people connect with themselves and with others. Through her practice, she helps clients navigate challenges with greater understanding, communication, and compassion. And with that, let us start our podcast.
Hi Tammy, thanks so much for being here with us today. So we know a lot of your work centers around relationships and intimacy and communication and mental health. So we're really glad to have your perspective on this conversation. So for this episode, we are looking at how attraction and relationship behaviors can be shaped by so many different factors at once. And not just conscious thought, but also things like appearance, voice, scent, and psychology, and even broader social influences that are happening today. So we're hoping to use that as kind of a starting point to dive deeper into some of the questions that we have. And we also like to hear your thoughts from a more applied and from a more clinical perspective and more from a real world setting. So to start us off, I'd like to ask, so that there's research that shows that younger generations do report less sexual activity despite more permissive attitudes and greater access to partners through the use of dating apps. But in your clinical experience, so to say, what psychological or relational factors may actually explain this gap between openness and also and the actual behavior?
Well, I think it's always important to understand that sex occurs in some sort of relationship. So I think what happens is a lot of times people get really distracted by sex because it's titillating. People have a lot of apprehensions about it. They have a lot of they're squeamish about it. People just are like, it makes people, and so they focus on it and it feels like, ooh. But really, when you look at a lot of this, it's not really about sex decreasing. Rather, it's a reduced capacity to form and sustain connection. So what I see a lot of is a lot of people, younger people, when I work with younger people, is they don't know how to face a certain kind of reality and emotional reality about themselves and their fear of getting rejected, fear of getting hurt. So they don't know how to do boundaries. And so then the way they do it is they try and have casual sex or let sex or avoid sex. So it's not really about sex. Sex is sort of a distraction. What they're really struggling with is the ability to and have a capacity, the emotional capacity to form and sustain complex relationships because sex occurs inside of some sort of relationship. Even if you're having a one night stand, that is some type of short term relationship that you're forming enough to be able to go back and have sex with somebody. And so a lot of people have a lot of anxiety that they don't know how to face and deal with about their bodies, about getting hurt. It's always about a feeling. Everything people do is to produce a feeling or to avoid a feeling. But the problem is they're not always aware of that. And so then if I don't know how to deal with who I am, if I'm not really sure who I am, and now I have to start interacting with another person, and I don't have good boundaries, I don't know how to deal with rejection. I struggle to not make what somebody else does about me. So let's say I like somebody, they don't like me, and I don't know how to deal with that. I think, oh my God, I'm not pretty enough, or my boobs are not big enough, or oh my God, I'm not tall enough. When that's not really it at all. It's actually about the other person, you know. And so then this fear of facing those feelings makes people want to engage in less activities, less social activities, and then vis-a-vis less sex. So it's not really like less sex. It's a more of a relationship to ability to sustain relationships. And where you see that is changing, it's that it's not technology causing it, it's technology revealing what's there. So now, you know, during COVID, you know, a lot of people in your generation didn't get a lot of the socialization opportunities you have. I see constantly more and more people do not know how, in Singapore in particular, I'm always scolding my couples. I'm like, get off the WhatsApp and have a conversation because people don't know how to deal with the feelings that they're feeling while they're trying to have a conversation. So they're like, no, I want to send a WhatsApp message so that I don't get all upset. Problem is that's asynchronistic communication. So it's not the technology. The technology is allowing people to express their avoidance. It's allowing them to avoid anxiety, discomfort, and creating distance, you know, and avoiding having real conversations that you need to have, which is intimacy. Conflict is intimacy. And intimacy doesn't mean I'm trying to dominate you. It means, oh my God, we're different. We think different. We feel different. We want different. And then I have to deal with that real time. Your feelings that are coming out of that, my feelings coming out of it. I have to learn how to regulate. I might be getting disappointed or rejected or all of these complicated feelings that I don't know how to recognize, deal with, identify, and therefore properly communicate, and then also deal with your stuff coming at me. So that's where I think it is. It's more complicated than like that's how I would see the reduction of sex. It's a function of the capacity to handle relationships and all the complexity that goes with the relationships and the feelings that are needed for relationships.
So, thank you so much for all this information. So I actually have just one follow-up question on this. So earlier you mentioned that people doing things on WhatsApp is a way of a sort of avoidance. So
Mm-hmm.
would you say even for maybe not just WhatsApp, right, but maybe online dating apps as well, do you think
Mm-hmm.
they're also a
Mm-hmm.
form of avoidance, or do you think they are
Yeah,
more of
yeah,
a
yeah.
form um what do you say?
It's
Um,
so let me put it this way. It's not the apps causing people to behave in a way. Rather, it's the people using the apps to express what's already there. So if I'm somebody who's really avoidant, meaning I avoid bad feelings, the apps give them an infinite way to exit that, right? You can post things, you can get people praising you. You know, you have that catfishing where people like to put up things and they get lots of praise and then they can leave with no responsibility, you know, so they can cultivate that. So if someone is anxious, these apps can give them constant activation, right? So if I'm anxious, like I'm going to be constantly, so it's how the person is using the app. It's not the app causing it. It's the person is there, and then it's how they engage with the app to express what's already there. So the apps don't really change who we are. They give us an avenue to express it. You know, mostly securely attached people aren't going to become insecure. They're going to have really good boundaries. They'll get really bored with it. They'll be like, oh my God, there's a bunch of unhealthy people on here. Because the research from the US originally showed that there's an above average percentage of mentally unhealthy people on these dating apps. You know, a lot of people are on there because they're insecure and they don't know if they want to leave a relationship. So they go and see what their market value is. There's a lot of married people who go on here who are, looking for avenues to avoid dealing with conflict, avoid dealing with their relationships. So they're looking for, one night stands or things like that so that they can stay in the marriage and avoid that. That's avoidant behavior. So the apps allow them to be even more avoidant. But the app isn't causing that. They're just using that to express what's already there.
Okay, I see. So it's really more about the inner state of the person, so to speak, that is causing all of these
Correct.
issues and so on and so forth.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, because people had all of these things pre-apps. This isn't like new phenomena. It's just it was different. Back in the day, it was you couldn't go to a grocery store experience of seeing people. You had to meet people in your community, church, school, through friends. And you had to talk with them, and so you had less people available to you. Now it's like this idea, like you can go, like going into a grocery store and you have all these pictures and you see people where when you're meeting somebody, you don't even know who you're meeting. The only thing you have in common is you're both on the dating app. And so that's why a lot of these things are really difficult. So when you meet somebody, then when you meet them, there's a high likelihood you're going to be disappointed because there's zero things that you have in common. These apps condense what used to take months. Because back in the day before these apps, you would be in a community and you would know people and you would know them you would know of them, right? And maybe you would start going out in a group and so all this would take weeks and months, and then in a group, and the group gets smaller, and then maybe one time you ask them out or go out. Sometimes you hear people doing this now, but it condenses it. So the apps condense all of that, right? And they just put everybody out there, and then people are like, what do you want? They're approaching it like they're buying a car with a sticker. Oh, what do you want? You want this, 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 and this. But this is not how people work. This is not how you can't buy a relationship or buy a person. Those are just facts about them. But if I take those same facts and put it in another person, even if I have 10 people with all the same facts, how they express it, that's the human individuality. It doesn't mean it's going to work. The fact that you want a relationship and I want a relationship doesn't mean we want the same kind of relationship. But this is how people are thinking. This is not how it works. So it's this transaction. Some people have this transactional thing. So again, that's another way that if I have this transactional approach to people, the apps will allow me to express that. It's not like the apps are causing that. It's a way I'm using it that way.
Okay. Thank you so much for the information. Yeah, it was really helpful.
Cool.
Okay, hi, Dr. Tammy. First of all, thank you so
Mhm.
much for being here today with us.
Mhm.
So for the previous two questions, I feel we've covered more of a nurture part of why sex happens. So now I want to go into more of the nature part. So, according to your experience, I think one thing that really would stand out to you is that attraction isn't always something people can clearly explain. Like a lot of people might say, "Oh, I don't know why I'm drawn to this person." So, I wanted to ask, some research suggests that
Mhm.
attraction can be influenced by subtle, non-conscious cues like scent or pheromones or just someone's overall vibe. So, in your experience, how much of attraction do you think actually happens outside of conscious awareness?
Probably a lot of it, but it's not about pheromones. Attraction is more often around pattern recognition, not magic. So that's why you see patterns where people marry their spouse. Their spouse looks like one of their mother or father. You see intergenerations repeating themselves. So it's about pattern recognition. So a lot of times what people call chemistry is often familiarity, and we're often drawn to what we know feels known, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. So, that's why people who grow up in, say, more domestic violence or abusive situations will be more attracted to, drawn, have chemistry for people who match that. Or if I'm with somebody, if I grew up in a family where it was emotionally avoidant, and people didn't, I will be drawn to somebody who is probably more avoidant, not because I like it, but because it's familiar. Our brain equates familiarity with comfort, even if that familiarity is bad or not healthy. And that's what becomes known as attraction or chemistry. So this is where we see patterns of childhood imprinting, attachment patterns, and repeating emotional environments. That's why you can see it even from generation to generation.
Okay, yeah, that right.
So
And I
save
think
your money
that's
on the pheromone perfumes.
yeah, definitely. And I
So
think
that's
that's
why if you
something.
have unhealthy patterns in your family, you'd want to clean those up because otherwise you're more likely to be unconsciously drawn to it. And I have this all the time where people reject healthy, good for them partners and are immediately drawn to unhealthy partners because they it doesn't feel good.
So basically, your past experiences can help you decide your future partner. Is it something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the problem is
Okay.
when you're not aware of it, and it's about a feeling. So it's how it makes you feel. And if you're
Mm,
not, feelings are often, from 0 to 7 is the most important time in a childhood's life, where most of the code that we're operating on as an adult, we're acting on. And it comes up as a feeling. That's why we're always trying to trace what the feeling is, where we feel it in our body, how does it feel? Because that's why you can see people like a lot of times facts don't stop us from having feelings, or facts don't stop somebody from making really bad decisions, even though you're like, oh my God, like I just told you that, laid it out, fact, 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 and they still go and do it because it's about what it's producing a feeling in them.
mm. I think we've all had that experience where you just meet someone for the first time and there's just this really strong instant connection and you cannot explain it every time. So, from a
Correct.
psychological perspective, what do you think is actually happening in those moments, like immediate
Mhm.
moments?
So when people feel that instant connection or when something is really strong, it's what is happening is there's something being activated. There's usually like a rapid attachment activation. So it's not necessarily connection or attraction, it's recognition. You're unconsciously recognizing, oh my God, this feels really familiar, it feels really safe, it feels really intense. And so that's what's going on is some sort of recognition. Doesn't mean it's healthy, doesn't mean it's good for you, doesn't mean it's bad for you, but that's where you want to develop self-reflection. And that's why it's usually like red flags when people, what I call like they do that binge dating. It's like you meet somebody, you have that intense thing, you want more of it, and then it's like Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, and then this is not healthy. This is some probably unhealthy pattern recognition getting activated that you translate into, oh, this is attraction, this is chemistry. Um,
Okay.
So, just to add on to what was mentioned earlier, so I feel like when a lot of people usually say, "Oh, I have a good feeling about them," or like the person that they just met, would there be an example of this?
yeah, pattern recognition, something is you're recognizing. That's why too, you can have that too. Like, I don't know what it is, but something about them really rubs me wrong. Like I have no evidence for it, but
Mm,
man, I don't like it. Like again, pattern recognition
mm.
somewhere.
So specifically, sensory cues like scent or voice or even like certain body languages might be contributing to this instant feeling of this like
Yeah, any of it.
non-confidence.
Yeah, it could be any of it. Patterns, the way they talk, the way they move, face shape. There's a lot of things on face shape. There's all of these things because our brain is constantly scanning for stuff that is outside of our awareness.
Mm.
I have one question to add on. Does this have to do anything with our nervous system? Because like, I see a lot of
Mhm.
research online or just online in general. Like people talk a lot about like the nervous system, like the why
Mhm.
like be more comfortable and everything. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. A lot of people, um, it's definitely a nervous system thing. Like, you'll hear people saying, I grew up in a house where everybody, when they talk, there's an intensity and they're screaming at each other. But we didn't experience because then they get with somebody else who's more calm and the relative to them. And they're like, oh my God, like you're screaming. And they're like, I'm not screaming. This is just me talking passionately and normally. This is how we did it in our family. So, so it's again a nervous system thing. It's definitely about um because that's again a recognition. Like sometimes people's energy can make you feel calmer or safer, or sometimes people who have attachment issues and they have a void, they will seek out people. And when I say seek out, they're not aware of it. They're not like, I'm seeking it out. It's an unconscious drawing where they're looking for drama because it helps them to avoid the emptiness or lack of connection in themselves. So that's a nervous system regulation. Or sometimes when people fight, that's about nervous system regulation. Like it's not like they're wanting to fight or control another person for control's sake. They're trying to regulate themselves. Um, and so then that can because their nervous system is activated, they're feeling unsafe.
Thank
And
you
that's
so
all back to feeling self-awareness. Yeah. Mhm.
Just adding on to Arsha's question. So
Mhm.
even when there's a strong like initial attraction, many
Mhm.
couples experience a decline in desire over time. So from your
Mhm.
clinic what psychological processes tend to drive this decline of desire?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so in some sense, desire doesn't just like fade. It's often reflecting what's happening or not happening in the relationship. So I don't see it necessarily as desire as something that naturally disappears, but it's more about something that changes based on the relationship dynamics. So what happens is when the relationship becomes flat or pressured or disconnected, desire will fall. So again, I meet you. We have this intense experience. Boom. It takes at least about 18 months to get a baseline understanding of somebody. That's how human beings are complicated. So if in within, 2 hours of meeting you, I feel this intense attraction, then people give meaning to that. Oh, this must mean we're in love. This must mean we're fitting with no evidence. With you don't actually even know that person, but you have a feeling, and now you're doing emotional reasoning, saying, because I feel it, therefore it is, and we must like each other. And then they start making decisions and they may move way too quickly, lock it in, move in, because they're trying to solve for, anxiety, fear of being alone, all the stuff they're not aware of. So they're together with somebody they actually don't really know. They're using that person to regulate existential issues, and you're kind of together for the wrong reason. Then of course it falls because it's not based on attraction. It wasn't actually traction or like a foundation that would support sustained integration. It was you're using this right relationship to regulate your nervous system. I'm afraid of being alone or something. So it's not like it just declines over time. That's why tips and tricks and gimmicks like that don't work. It often has to do with something around uh, the structure of the relationship. And so it can be, if over time I'm working hard and I don't feel like you're meeting me, we can get resentment. Resentment is going to kill desire. If there's lack of emotional engagement from one of the persons, like that's going to kill desire. Um, if we moved in so quickly, we're in each other's back pockets, we're all over each other, that over familiarity without differentiating is going to kill desire because eroticism lives in the unknown. So I see a lot of people because they're so anxious, they move in, they're in each other's back pockets, checking each other's emails, checking everything, doing everything together, every like they're one. You can't have sex with that person then because it's like having sex with yourself. Or it can move into familial love. And that's usually when people aren't differentiated. They're too anxious. They're often enmeshing with the other person, and then desire is going to go down. Or if one or both people are too emotionally immature, because only grown-ups have sex. But a lot of times when people are too emotionally immature, the way they think about, process, and handle their feelings or lack of boundaries is going to undermine sexual desire, either for them or the other person, because you don't really want to have sex with somebody who has childlike energy and childlike reaction. So again, in a relationship, it's not one night stand sex. I'm handling you. If you're always freaking out or having, temper tantrums or can't handle disappointment or, and you're behaving like a young person, this is not attractive. Desire is going to go down.
Does this maybe typically happen when maybe the couple have been together for a while, then maybe one person has the growth mindset and then the other person doesn't really have a growth mindset? Does this
Mhm.
typically happen between those kind of couples?
That's one of the avenues where people just grow apart. If you get together when you're too young, um, I mean, right now, marriage is an experiment. Historically, marriage only lasted 7 to 13 years. And because people would die, there was war, famine, disease. So we're in a period where we're running an experiment where it's not usual that you would get in a marriage that's for 50 years. People change incredibly a lot over a lifetime due to life experiences. And so it's a big experiment and if you're and most people get married under 27, it takes until about 27 for your brain to be formed. Your brain, that's why military, churches, things, they want young people because you can still shape them. But so if you get together with somebody before you actually know who you are, the increases of growing apart because one's a growth mindset. Another could be, I want more money or a different kind of lifestyle and I want a quiet lifestyle. It's anything. You can just grow and change and evolve into different things. So that there's all different ways people can grow and not grow in a way that's compatible. So that's where it's a lot of energy, to keep doing that and see if you want the same thing. And, like I said, if people get together when they're too young, or when they don't know who they are, or you're getting together because for the wrong reasons, because I'm afraid to be alone, or because that's the goal that I have, or because of pressure, where you're not really vetting the relationship, you're using the relationship to solve other things, then you're always having a higher risk of problems, of growing apart or being incompatible. And that's why sometimes people think what is a sex problem isn't a sex problem. It's an incompatibility problem. It's a relationship problem. It's a power dynamic problem, but it's manifesting in their sex. So lack of sex is often a symptom, not the problem.
Oh, I see. So interesting. It's a new perspective for me.
Mm-hmm. Because
Singapore
a
is
lot of people have this idea that marriage causes sex. No, it doesn't. Marriage causes attraction. No, it doesn't. Marriage doesn't do anything. It's not like there's a beam of light that comes down around you. Marriage is just a legal contract that makes breaking up very hard and expensive. But if the two people aren't fundamentally aligned and well suited and have a lot of grown up skills and are differentiated, all of these things, it's a complicated thing because people are complicated.
Then given that attraction involves many other aspects or emotional filters, are there any ways that those couples that have lost like maybe like attraction or desire over time, how can they like rekindle or like get back like the initial like attraction? Is it like
Do
through
therapy.
communication or in therapy?
Therapy.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. Tips and tricks is not going to work because that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the source of it would be, because you're making something that if sex is a symptom and it's not the problem, and now you go on a date and wear sexy lingerie, but I'm really friggin' pissed off at you because you aren't pulling your weight with the kids. You've gotten fat. You don't treat me nice. You aren't picking up after yourself. Lingerie isn't going to cut it because there's all sorts of resentment and anger and hurt over here. That's not a tip or trick thing. That's a structural problem. There's misalignment and a lot of other things happening. So that's where people are trying to make it gimmicky. Well, more people would rather have a sex problem because that feels mechanical and fixable than have a relationship problem because that's scary. So people want what is actually a relationship problem. They want to try and jam it in and make it a sex problem. When it's not often it's never a sex problem. Sex is a consequence.
So, I think for my part, I kind of like how you were mentioning also about things like how people were using relationships to regulate their own nervous systems and how
Mm-hmm,
I mean that actually stood out to me a lot because I also do
mm-hmm,
realize from personal experience that and from people that friends I heard from as well that a lot of people are doing this
mm-hmm,
and it leads to so
mm-hmm,
many issues that you were just talking about, you know. Uh,
mm-hmm,
so I guess maybe perhaps to close off everything, maybe
mm-hmm.
to as a very experienced clinical sex therapist, for the people in Singapore, like what would you specifically recommend them to do to improve their attraction towards each other and to have more a healthy relationship in the Singaporean context?
Mm-hmm. Therapy.
Therapy, okay. And
Literally,
then
because individual or couple, because a lot of times, like I said, if you don't know who you are, if you aren't aware of your feelings, if you aren't comfortable with yourself, right? If you even struggle just to say, hey, I don't want to go out tonight, or hey, I really don't like when you leave the toilet seat up, you're never going to be able, if you can't even do that, and these are maybe silly examples, but what I'm saying, or if you're so anxious or you're so afraid to express yourself, about what you want, to do on the weekend, or how you want to spend money, or hey, when you don't call me when you're late, I feel hurt. If you're afraid to say these things, you're never going to be able to say anything about what you want in sex because the stakes feel even higher. So part of that is you to be attractive, because you have to be attracted to yourself. You have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to know what you want. You have to be okay with your feelings. You have to have good boundaries, self-awareness, because all of that is a part of being an individuated grown up. So that then you can meet your partner in a shared reality. Well, hey, if they say, hey, I don't really like the way you're kissing me or touching me or doing these things, you don't hear that as an attack. You're like, oh, okay, great. That's not about me. That's about you and how you're experiencing me. That's super, right? But most people can't do that. Everyone's like, oh my God, am I backward? They collapse under that, or they hide. Or if you can't talk with your partner, like, because people don't have the same um uh needs, like what people don't realize is sex. It's not, they call it like sex to desire discrepancy or something like. It's not that. It's just like people never encourage them that we can be incompatible sexually, just like we can be incompatible how we want our money, or how we want to have fun, or bedtimes, or whatever. Like, you can be incompatible sexual, and people try and make it seem like there's a sex desire. It's not that. So you have to learn how to talk about all these things with and regulate your feelings, and be aware of your beliefs that may be harmful, because a lot of people have a lot of incorrect, age inappropriate, or just unrealistic ideas about sex that are just flat out wrong, that are informing them, and then they're getting hurt. Or if you have a lot of expectations that you're not aware of, you're going to be disappointed. So all these things affect. That's why a lot of times therapy, everybody could use therapy, whether it's individually, to become aware of themselves, to become more grounded, to become aware of, hey, this is about me and that's about you. These are my feelings. Those are your feelings. This is my reality. That's your reality. So that helps to learn how to deal with differences, because, otherwise, if, people, if you don't like the way I'm kissing you, and then I decide that that's bad, or a lot of times, women will think, oh, if a guy's not getting an erection, that's about me. Now, a lot of times, especially as men get older, that's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. Could be he's tired, he's stressed, he's older, he's overweight, he has cardiovascular. It could be everything, but people's ignorance about that can lead them to cause a lot of pain. I get a lot of cases like that, or just all of these different things. So the more aware you are of yourself, about how things really work, about your boundaries, about communicating, how to deal with feelings, that's the best way, because good sex requires lots of talking, dealing with feelings, and really good boundaries. It's a negotiation, and you have to be comfortable talking about, because it's play and fun. But just like anytime we do anything fun or playful, you got to negotiate that, and you got to be comfortable with who you are, and you got to be comfortable that the other person may not want to do or like what you do, and that's not about you. That's just about them. And then you might have to deal with your feelings of disappointment. And a lot of people don't want to deal with their feelings of disappointment, so they want their partner to change, and so they don't have to deal with their feelings of disappointment, and then that creates conflict.
So just to follow up with that, so do we see a gender difference between the men and women, like for the couples who lost like their attraction to one another?
No. Mm-mm.
No?
Mm-mm.
Or is there any like
No.
specific factor for the males or females that they lose their attraction? Say, emotional or the physical aspects?
No, but a lot of times after the birth of a child, there's a 60% decrease in marital satisfaction. So a lot of women are very disappointed because they didn't that people don't know how to vet and prepare for childbirth. So a lot of times women are very angry and disappointed with the lack of support or care or help that they're getting. So that affects it. So they're pissed off and angry about how the guy is parenting. If you want to look at it like a gender thing, or sometimes men are pissed off and angry with their wife because she's over focused on the children. He's feeling neglected. They don't know how to negotiate that. And so he withdraws. They don't know how to navigate that, because that's a huge change. But no, I mean, generally men and women aren't really that different. They all have feelings. What is different is the socialization that they get.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to sum everything off, I think maybe the main takeaway of this is that you have to really learn to know yourself, and to know your needs and everything, and also be confident in telling them to the
And
other
accept them.
person. Things like, yeah,
And also
accept
accept
them.
and it may not be for everybody. And you know,
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you're bad or good. It just means maybe you're incompatible. You see, it's really because the more you can accept yourself and know yourself and accept yourself, then it's much easier to see and accept other people and how they're different from you. That it's not about you. You know, they're not doing this to you. They're just being themselves, even if you don't like it, even if they use clunky language.
And it's also interesting for me because like I think a common phrase is that when you can love yourself, you can love others and things like that. And everything really starts from within and then without
Yeah, I like
support.
the word acceptance more than love because I don't know what love always means,
No.
but it's acceptance. It's acceptance. Life requires a lot of acceptance. That
Okay.
life is unfair, things don't go the way you want, you can't have what you want, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Tammy, for having
Yeah,
this podcast interview with us. Yeah.
sure. Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome.
We
Bye.
appreciate all your thoughts.
Bye.
Bye.